Hi, I'm Alex, and today I'm going to be doing a review of the Nokia 8000 4G. This is a follow-up video to my unboxing video, and in that video I tell you why you might want to consider this phone in 2021. I'll either leave a link somewhere around me or in the description. I'm going to tell you up front, this isn't going to be the best phone review ever. However, that's fine, because this isn't the best phone ever. But if you're interested in the review, stick around. I'm going to start off this review talking about the construction of this phone. It's just a small block of plastic. It feels like plastic, it doesn't feel like it's going to break at all, but at the same time, it does feel like it's cheap, quite bouncy, quite springy. I have no issues with the construction of this phone. However, when I'm using it, there is one thing that really gets on my nerves, and that is this central keypad here. So with that keypad, it's raised slightly, and just the feeling of plastic going into my thumb, a cheap plastic, really just grates a little bit. It's not painful, it's not uncomfortable, it's just not a pleasant feeling. And I'd say in terms of the construction, that's the thing that bothers me most. However, if you're looking for a cheap-ish phone, although I appreciate that for a feature phone this isn't cheap, then something that you're happy to throw into your bag, this isn't going to break anytime soon. It feels like it has those older Nokia qualities of a bit of sturdiness. I think that plastic, that springiness, is going to take a little bit of a beating. Next, I'm going to talk about the size of the phone and this 2.8-inch display. So when I got the phone, I was a little bit concerned that this display would be too small. Don't get me wrong, this display is not going to win any awards for best display of the year, but it's absolutely fine. I can see everything clearly, it's more than big enough. One thing in terms of the display itself is that the angles, if you're looking off angle, is really bad. So if, for example, you want to share a video and look at this with someone else, two people watching this at the same time will struggle to both get a good view. But actually, in terms of size, it's a much better size to hold and to talk on than a modern day smartphone. So if you're looking for something that feels good in the hand to talk on, then I can absolutely say that the Nokia 8000 is good in that regard. Okay, so what's it like as a phone? Actually, I've never owned a better phone to talk to people on. Certainly a mobile phone anyway. The core quality is much better than my old Samsung. I had dead spots in that Samsung that I don't get with this. It's a much more comfortable phone to hold for a long period of time, and no one has complained at all about my quality of speaking to them, and actually I can hear them perfectly well. So if your primary objective is to get a phone to speak to people on, then this meets that criteria really, really well. If, in addition to a phone, the old thing we used to do was text on it, that's where this falls down. I mean, it's been about 15 years since I last used a feature phone. Well, back then we just called them phones, and it feels like we're going back 15 years. Texting with these numbers really isn't a great experience. The phone does have predictive text, it is usable, but if you're planning on texting an awful lot on this phone, can I suggest you don't get this phone? However, with regard to that, I think any feature phone where you're typing using this number keypad is just not going to be a good experience. Now, I do text quite a bit. However, the way I get around that is I use WhatsApp, and I use that now predominantly online through their web app portal, which is really good. So I end up typing most of my texts on a keyboard, on a computer, on an iPad. So that's how I get around that as an issue for me. But as I say, if you're looking for a device where you're going to be texting quite a bit, this is really not going to be very useful in that regard at all. My biggest issue with the phone itself is the software. It's slow and it's buggy. I think Nokia knows it's slow and buggy, because if you press the power button at the top, one of the options, instead of turning it off, is to do a clean of the software while the phone stays on, and this takes 30 seconds or so. And when you're having to build that in, then it's not a great statement for where the software is at. Now, I found that I need to do this at least once a week to keep the phone moving properly, moving smoothly, and I think most people wouldn't know that's there and would just get frustrated by how the phone is slowing down, moving differently and difficultly between the apps, and actually just finding people's contact details and putting in numbers can become quite slow if you're not cleaning it and keeping this phone fresh. But just be aware, if you do get this phone, it is going to slow down, it is going to be a pain. There are ways to get around it, but it's a definite frustration. With regard to battery life, it's sort of a tale of two halves. The standby time on this phone is phenomenal. It's rated at 28 days, and if you're not using it, the battery really slowly sips away, and it's not a concern if you don't use it for a day or two. It will have a very similar level of battery to where you left it. However, in terms of using it as a phone, the 4G calling is only rated for just over 3 hours. So if you're planning on using this quite a bit, then you need to be aware that actually in use, the battery will drain quite quickly. Also, even though it's only a small battery, a 1500 mAh battery, it only has slower charging. As I'm used to faster new charging phones, even though they have much larger batteries, you will notice that this does take a while to charge. So if you need this all day, just be aware that it'll be fine if you're charging it overnight, but if it's short on charge and you need it soon, just be aware of that. So I want to talk about the additional features of this phone, which really are the things that might make you want to consider getting this Nokia 8000. And the thing that really sold me on it in terms of buying it in the first place was the 4G in the name, and the fact that it can be used as a 4G wireless hotspot. Why that's important to me is this is replacing my daily driver smartphone, and that means I've got a lot less access to use the internet properly, to use apps. However, I do have an iPad, I do have a laptop, and on occasion I'll be able to take them out with me, take them away when I need that functionality. And the fact that I can hook it up to this phone and use the 4G Wi-Fi hotspot mean that essentially, in terms of data, in terms of the internet, I should have a very similar experience to using a modern smartphone. One of the other reasons I got this phone was the fact that it had access to WhatsApp. However, that really hasn't gone so well. I've tried several times now and I can't get this to connect to the WhatsApp service. Now, I haven't reached out to Nokia. It hasn't had a massive impact on me because I'm still using my older Samsung phone as a sort of hub for WhatsApp, and I'm accessing it via the web. However, from my experience, if you're looking for one of the main reasons for this phone to be to use WhatsApp, I found that extremely frustrating. On that note, it also does connect to Google, which is really helpful because I have a lot of stuff on the Google platform. I did find it a little bit difficult to sign up and sign into my Google account originally. However, I eventually managed it and it's worked absolutely fine. Appropriately, while I'm filming this video for YouTube, it seems appropriate to mention the YouTube app. So you can really easily, once you sign into your Google account, use YouTube on this phone. The video looks absolutely fine. However, the thing that really frustrated me was the external sound and speakers on this phone just grate a little bit. They're not that good, and although I could just about watch a video on YouTube, I wouldn't want to listen to it for any great length of time. However, this phone does have a headphone jack. You can connect things via Bluetooth, so I'm sure if the speakers are such a huge issue and you do want to use it for that, then you can just plug in some headphones or stick some Bluetooth headphones and connect it to the phone. So with regard to games, and that definitely isn't why I got this phone. If anything, this phone probably has too many games for my liking, but it does have that old nostalgic Snake game. That's not easy for me to say. I've played that for 5 minutes, given it a go, and actually I get bored really quickly. For me, I think the memory of the Snake game on a phone like this is a lot better than playing it in reality. But if games are your thing, then it does have access to it. If games aren't your thing, then you can totally ignore them. And importantly, from my perspective, I don't think they're that good anyway. So the last feature I thought I'd talk about in this review is the camera. So this phone does have one camera on the back. It has no front-facing camera. And to put it bluntly, the camera is absolutely rubbish. It is usable. So I took a photo earlier. So I took a test photo of a screen, say with some text on, see if I could read it from about 1 meter away. And you could read the text clearly enough, but then everything around the screen was really, really dark, which was really odd because the room was quite light. So I turned the screen off and I took another photo with the screen off, and actually the room looked the sort of colour it did. But both photos are really grainy, really poor quality. If you're going to need to take a picture for some reason every now and again, then know that there's a camera here. But those quality photos are not going to be ones that you'll treasure forever. It's really there for an emergency. I really can't think of a camera emergency. But if you're not going to use the camera very often, then you're not missing a lot here. So in summary, what do I think of this phone? Is it worth buying? Well, I'm going to say it definitely isn't for most people. But that's all right, because most people wouldn't even be watching this video, let alone get to the end and the summary. I think for older people who might be interested in this phone and looking for a simpler phone, a simpler life, this phone definitely isn't for them. Those complications, the slowing down the software, I'm sure there are going to be simpler feature phones out there. However, for me, in terms of a tech detox and tech minimalisation, I actually quite like this phone quite a bit, but for an odd reason. The frustrations I've talked about in this phone make me want to use it less. And in using this phone and going over to the Nokia 8000 as my daily driver, what I was looking for was a phone that would work, would be there, I could make phone calls on, but I wouldn't want to pick out. I wouldn't want to touch as much. And actually in that sense, it meets that criteria. So I hope that helps. If you've liked this video and it's helped, please hit that like button. And if you like what I'm putting out there, want to see how my YouTube journey goes, then hit that subscribe button too. Until next time, I've been Alex. Thanks.